we are here with Joshua Davis, who is very famous artist designer, known for mixing technology and art and creativity. He exhibited in probably every single place you can imagine, from Tate to Design Museum, and spoke at TED, as well as collaborated with Dead Mouse and IBM Watson and lots of fantastic places. So it's my personal pleasure today to ask millions and millions of questions, as well as I hope people who are joining us right now prepared their questions. So Joshua, we actually met first at FITC in Amsterdam, and one thing that really struck me that time is how friendly and relaxed you are in person, not just on stage, but also behind the scenes. You're very laid back, you're very friendly. How do you stay positive all the time?
Wow, you're making me feel guilty, like I should be mean or something. No, you know, it's funny, like when I meet people who are giving talks at conferences, and maybe it's like their first time giving a talk and you can see that they're a little bit nervous. You know, I always say the same thing, which is, look at how fortunate we are to basically all come together in a place, in a specific country, and talk about shit that we love making. So, I mean, it's not like you're a politician where you have to get up and lie to people and just bullshit your way through conversation. Like, we're actually here talking about stuff that we love. Like, I love the color orange, and I love triangles, and I love programming. I mean, why would you not be happy talking about such niche stuff like that? So I always make a point to, like, you know, to meet as many people as possible and share ideas and learn new things. You know, I'm constantly trying to be the student. I don't want to be figured out. I don't want to be polished. So, you know, in order to kind of maintain that idea, you need to try to engage with as many people as possible and just not be a dick. I didn't know I was supposed. I didn't know I was supposed to be evil. I suppose I could change that.
But I wonder, were you always that positive and curious, loving life, loving shapes and colors?
Yeah, I pretty much knew I was going to be an artist in the second grade. There was no question that I was going to try everything in my power to make this my job in life. And there was that kind of determination and focus when I was in second grade. And it's funny because I started off, you know, obviously drawing and painting like most artists do. And I think I was in Catholic school, either the second or third grade, and I was like drawing pictures with the reports that I was, you know, the class assignments that I was given. And the nuns actually called my parents and said, you know, this kid he's weird, but he has a real knack for making artwork, and you should nurture that. And so my parents, who are not involved in the arts at all, I mean, my dad literally was a rocket scientist. He sort of worked with NASA, building stuff for NASA. Like, literally, art was not part of the equation. And they went out and bought me an oil painting set. I think I was like, yeah, man, I was like a kid, like working with turpentine and other really caustic shit, which I suppose speaks volumes of how weird I am today. But yeah, so they nurtured art from a really young age, and that was just like a way that I could sort of connect with the world, you know? Like, I wasn't the kind of guy that went to parties, played sports. I mean, I mostly just did skateboarding, listening to music, and making art. And that was my way of just sort of coming to terms with the way I saw the world. So yeah, I knew from a pretty young age that art was going to be the goal.
And you grew up in Colorado. So
I did.
How was it growing up? Was it a creative space? Did you feel like it was full of inspiration? Where did you get this inspiration for all these creative things that you're doing?
Yeah, so obviously I grew up in Colorado, but I was born in California. I was born in San Diego, so half of my family's in California, half of my family's in Colorado. Moved to Colorado, I think, when I was like 4 years old, And, you know, I think there's not, at that time, I lived in the suburbs, just kind of like the foothills of right of the Rocky Mountains. And, you know, the idea then, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot to do. It wasn't like a big city. So you sort of had to like invent your own fun, right? So it meant, you know, skiing, it meant snowboarding when eventually that got invented, and skateboarding and hiking. And we would hike up into the foothills and find cliffs to jump off of cliffs into the water. You know, so it was very much like an exploratory adventure. So I'm really grateful for that time that I lived in Colorado. I did that until I was like a senior in high school. Then I actually got sponsored for skateboarding. So I was an amateur skateboarder, moved back to California, lived with my grandma in Huntington Beach, California. My next door neighbor was Chet Thomas, who rode for Pal and Peralta and a bunch of other things. So we used to skate.
Did you feel like you will become a skateboarder and this will be your career, or you still knew that?
No, definitely art and design. Like, one of my first sponsors was a company up in Boulder, Colorado called Naked Skateboards. And they basically made like blank skateboard decks, and I would basically paint my own graphics. And that was like a part of skateboarding. Like you would design the bottom of your skateboard. There was also kind of, you know, this is the 80s. So we also did really weird shit with our grip tape on the top of the skateboard. So, and we'd make our own t-shirts because we were poor, we were broke. So we sort of had to, I was doing design just to like live in that ecosystem before I really even knew it was called design. So no, I think, you know, I moved back to California in 89, 90, moved back to California. It was an amateur skateboarder, was still kind of like designing my own clothes, designing my own skateboards, designing, so I knew like design was going to be, that finish line just kind of moved. Like, I was like, okay, I'm going to spend a few years skateboarding and snowboarding. And that was fun. But at the time, like skateboarding, you didn't really get paid to be amateur. You couldn't live off of it. So I was just a senior in high school that was sort of along for the ride. And I rode with Tony Hawk and Chet Thomas and Jason Lee and Ed Templeton. Like, all those guys kind of lived in my neighborhood. So I was skateboarding, but knew that the goal eventually was going to be back to artwork, back to
and
graphic design.
Did you have like a plan in your head, like, okay, I need to go to the art school, I need to get a job?
Yeah.
Or...
No, art school wasn't even like, art school at the time, and this, maybe I was just young and naive, I didn't even think that was part of the equation. No, I was going to skateboard for a couple of years, and in 1992, I moved to New York with $300, I think, a plane ticket and 3 boxes. Like, I was I was ready to go. Like, there was no, like, I had arrived. Like, let's do this. There was this no idea of going to school. So I went to New York, partied for a little bit, got into a bit of trouble with drugs and alcohol. Eventually got sober. And then I decided, like, oh, I need to go to school. I need to go to art school. Mostly because for time, I didn't think they were really going to teach me anything. Again, I was just sort of an arrogant shithead. I was really like, okay, I'm going to go to school for time so that, you know, I can pay my bills, live really modestly, and just figure out, like, what were the next steps. And the rest is history.
Brilliant. I just love how much energy you had throughout your life and courage to do like absolutely crazy things, like move to New York, or just kind of know that you will be a designer no matter what. It was
insane. I think the first year I lived in New York, I slept on people's floors. I didn't have an apartment. I literally like slept on people's couches and floors. I think the first year I was in New York. But there was that, you know, it's like you hear these stories, you know, about I can't remember. You know, I'm going to mix up the story, but it's something like during the Civil War, you know, like this Civil War general, you know, puts all his men on a boat and they sort of sail, you know, across this great expanse of water. And then they get to the other side and he tells his men to dismantle the boats and burn all the wood. And so the men don't question and they take the boats apart and they burn all the wood. And then finally one guy says, you know, fuck, we're burning the boats. Like, how are we going to get back? You know, and the Civil War general is, oh, there is no going back. There's only win. There's only succeed. There's only, you know, this moment. And I think that, you know, obviously that's an extreme idea, but I realize now, like, that was the goal. The goal was that there was no fail. There was, you know, do what you love and try everything at any cost in order to wake up every day and love the life you're living, you know?
And where was this first mini breakthrough where you felt, okay, I don't need to sleep on the floor anymore. I think I made the right decision. Something is going to happen. What was this first clue for you?
Yeah, so eventually, you know, again, I had a pretty bad spell with drugs and alcohol. And I didn't make art for a couple of years. And, you know, I won't go into huge detail of that whole story. But once I got sober, and I've been sober now since 1995, so 24 years, I think, I've been sober, something like that. Once I got sober, I had the clarity to, like, okay, let's figure this out as an adult. And it wasn't until, like, I went to Pratt, that's where I went to school, here in Brooklyn, at a school called Pratt, and I started with painting, and the internet was just kind of happening. And so it was kind of a culmination of all those things kind of happening at the same time, where I got sober, I got really focused on art making as a professional career, you know, rather than just like, I'm an artist and I'm edgy, you know, like there was real conversation about, like, okay, how can I do this for the rest of my life? And then there was the internet kind of happening, and that whole situation, kind of that whole thing started to come together like around 1996. And I would say there was kind of this exploratory phase between like 1996 and 1998 where like things were really popping off. Like I was really getting a clear understanding that I was at the start of something, you know, like kind of the start of using technology to make art. 1998 is when the shit really hits the fan, where I sort of have this big epiphany, like, oh, I'm a painter, I just don't use a brush and paint anymore. I use programming and computers. So that was kind of the big aha moment, was that I was starting to ride a wave that literally was just forming.
So it was something different, no one around you was doing, so you knew that could be a thing for you.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's a real struggle when you're a traditional painter. You know, you sort of sit down and say, like, what am I, and again, this is just me, but, you know, I was sitting down as a traditional painter thinking like everything had already been done. So what was my place in the universe, you know? And it so happens that I was painting like old Dutch masters. So I was painting like people from the 15th century. And there was this like real question, like, why the fuck am I doing this? And so like when the internet happened, for me back in 1996 is when I started working with HTML and JavaScript. There really was this kind of epiphany, this kind of aha moment that something had just happened that has never happened before. And it was pretty clear that this wave was just starting, and I was going to start surfing it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Another thing that I love about you, you're not just generous with the community of people in terms of speaking at lots of conferences and sharing your stories, but also you were always generous with your work. You had your source code on your website, anyone can use it. You always kind of supporting that community. What was your thinking behind that? And was there a strategic thing you knew to build a following? You need to like, what were you doing? Why were you doing it?
If I'm being totally honest, I would get, so I didn't know what I was doing. That's first off. I really had no clue what I was doing. And programming was so new to me, but it was exciting and it was addictive, but it was difficult. You know, I was not in school for computer science. I was in school for painting. So here I am painting during the day and then trying to self-teach myself computer science at night, and programming and understanding kind of the basics and the concepts of programming it was hard. It was difficult. And so I really didn't know what I was doing. And so I would try things. I would try things and I would put things together and then I would sort of put them out. And I would put them out on this website, PlayStation, that I launched back in 1998. And for that first month, I was kind of trying things and putting them out, trying things and putting them out. And I was trying to put out something like a day, every day. And this is kind of before like dailies was a thing. I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to put out like something daily, just to get better, just to better myself. Mm-hmm. So to go back to your question, I spent this month kind of like putting up all this stuff. Well, I was getting a shit ton of email, like, how are you doing this? 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 And I'm like, honestly, I think I started open sourcing my stuff so that people would stop emailing me. They would stop asking me. They would stop asking me for how I was doing things. I'd just be like, here it is. Stop asking.
How did they even discover that you existed? Like, where were they coming from?
Yeah, there was like, again, this was like a really different time. This was like 1998, and there was like a small group of us that were kind of doing things. And we just, I would just spend hours like finding people, and just like, the community was a lot different then. It was new. There was no Vile. There was no Vitriol. It was just us trying to connect and use the internet as a canvas. So the community was like a lot more helpful and inquisitive because we were all kind of figuring it out at the same time. So, the whole open source thing, here's what's interesting about that is I start giving stuff away just because I didn't know how to handle all the email. And the benefit is that, 50 people would download the source code, add on to it, and give it back to me. And so I was like, I remember like one of the very first things was this guy, James Tyndall, who is a UK designer, really good at programming, much better at programming than me at the time. And he added on to a bunch of my source code and gave it back to me. And I was like, holy shit, like I never would have thought to do that. And not only did I not think to do that, but I was learning new things because people were sort of correcting my code, adding on to my code. And so I was sort of learning through this act of not knowing what I was doing and giving the stuff away. So if you've ever questioned whether or not you should give your work away, the answer is a resounding yes. Like you have more to benefit from giving away what you know because you're going to learn so much more because people who think different than you or smarter than you are going to make adjustments, make recommendations that I think just come back and inform your creative process even farther. So my expansion of knowledge has happened infinitely faster by giving stuff away rather than hoarding it.
Brilliant. I think it's such a lovely thought and definitely a really good advice to all creatives to be more open and share. I think we all benefit from sharing creativity with each other. I love it.
I agree.
Another interesting thing that I personally found about you is how well organized you are. I don't know if it's true, but from the outside, you're a very organized person. With all the craziness that happens and all the side projects and all the interesting things that you're doing, you're very responsive to emails. Even organizing this interview was very straightforward. And with artists, and especially artists, not just designers who are kind of very structured, but artists, it's not usually what happens. How do you do this? How do you organize your time or your life to make sure that you take care of all the things? And you have family as well. So how do you make sure that everything is in the right place?
Well, I think I'm kind of it's kind of maybe a side conversation, but I don't do a lot of corporate projects. I only do like a couple projects a year, and I live really modestly. My house is really tiny and I don't make a lot of money. And, that's kind of always the joke is, this one time I was at this conference with Stefan Sagmeister, who's become a pretty good friend of mine, who I sit down and have lunch with, and I can kind of ask questions since he's been in the industry a lot longer than I have. And this one time I remember I was speaking at this conference and there was like maybe 3,000 people there, and I'm having lunch with Stefan, and I said, I'm I'm trying to figure stuff out because I think like half of the people in the audience make more money than I do. And you know, it's like, how do I become a millionaire? How do I become really stinking rich? And I was waiting for Stefan to tell me the secret. And Stefan said, yeah, they probably do. And they probably should. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, he's like, most of the people in the audience probably make a lot more money than you do. And I was like, well, shit, that's not what I wanted to hear. And he's like, yeah, but you know, they probably hate their jobs. They probably, you know, they have to get up every day, and they probably are doing graphic design in an industry that maybe they're not really excited about, and maybe they're not making the work that they really love. And he's like, and that's a sacrifice. So maybe they should make more money than you. Maybe they should be compensated financially because they're working on projects that they don't love. And he's like, but you get to wake up every day and you get to kind of make the things that you love. So you're probably going to make less money, but you're probably going to be happier. And so, you know, your question was, how do you find time? You know, I don't do a lot of projects that are paying projects that, you know, I have to sit down and start to, you know, think about the work and make the work and go through the grind of making the work. You know, I only do that a couple of times a year. You know, I kind of joke that I only have like 2 or 3 projects a year. So that means the rest of the time I sort of have off to think about things and make new work and collaborate with new people and have interviews with people like you. So, you know, the question is that I have found this balance between how much money do I really need to make in order to be happy and in order to sustain, like, paying my mortgage and eating food, versus working on research, working on exploration, being able to go and talk at conferences. You know, so I've figured out that really delicate balance. And the truth of the matter is that I don't think I can have a job in a corporate environment where, you know, I'm a body among a bunch of bodies, and I would probably make a lot of money, but everything else would sort of sacrifice. So I've just kind of figured out, like, I don't need to be rich. I don't, you know, and I live pretty modest. You know, again, I can walk you around my studio. My studio is only 24 feet by 24 feet. It's a really tiny room that I work in.
Amazing. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'll ask a couple of the questions and then we can have a tour. And also everyone
Sure.
who is listening and watching us, prepare your questions. We'll start answering them in another 5-10 minutes. So post them. I'll go through everything and we try to answer as many as possible. My next question to you is about, you kind of already mentioned it, about kind of your passion and professional development and working in companies versus working on your own. You joined some of the companies, so you worked as part of the teams and then you would go work on your own, then you would join a company. So can you explain this process a bit more? Because for me, there are like 2 types of people: those who are always like freelancers, they could never be part of the team, they just like working on their own. And there are those who prefer like environment where there is a team, there is a career progression and all of that. You had both. So what was your logic there and how did you switch between the 2?
Yeah, so, I mean, if you, you know, I've been making work now for about 20 years, 20 some odd years, maybe, professionally. And, you know, I worked for a studio way back in 1998. It was kind of my first studio job. It was for a studio called IO360. It was 16 of us. And that was really good because I kind of understood, you know, you have artist and you have designer, and artist, you know, can tend to work, you know, alone. And designers, you know, kind of have to work with teams and figure out how to work well with others. And you've got producers and you've got the client and you've got these teams that get assembled around jobs. So I needed to go work for a studio like right out of college just to get that experience. I think it's really valuable to go into a studio environment and kind of figure out how those things work, how to have empathy, how to shut the fuck up and listen to other people, kind of important, you know? You kind of get away from ego. And I went to go work for a studio, and IO360 got bought, and we went from 16 people to 200 people.
Oh, wow.
And that was just it was too much for me. So, so I left there, and I went to go work for another really small studio called Kyokan. And Kyokan was kind of my next job. And I think we were 8 people at the time at Kyokan. There were sort of 8 of us. And we, again, worked on some really great jobs. I got some really great experience. And, here's the kind of the thing is I was working for a studio, but then I would go home, I'd work 8 hours or 10 hours, at this job, doing client work that maybe I, wasn't so completely jazzed about. But then I would go home and I would spend hours working on stuff that I liked. And so there was the difference is I would put in time at the studio, and then I would put in time for myself when I would get home. I don't like television. I don't watch TV. I am not a passive person. I don't like passive experiences. So I would come home and okay, cool. What can I work on to sort of better myself and interact with this new idea that I was embarking in. And what happened is because I was working at a studio and getting that experience, and because I was doing all this work when I got home, it started to get more visibility. And eventually I get this job for Volkswagen. And the project was maybe a couple of months, and they were looking at this personal work. They were like, hey, we really like this personal work you were doing. Would you mind doing a microsite for Volkswagen for this car called the Phaeton, which was kind of their luxury car. And they said the budget's $50,000. So I kind of went home and I was like, some people that's all they make in a year is $50,000. So I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to take the leap of faith. I'm going to quit my job, and I'm just going to get this one job for Volkswagen, and I'm going to make $50,000. And then I have to figure out how to live an entire year just on that money. And that was it. That was kind of the leap of faith. And so, the question, so I was prepared to live an entire year and not do anything else but this one Volkswagen job. And so what happened is obviously I got other jobs, and then I got the confidence of, okay, cool. I maybe can, live and work on my own and work independently. And so I did that for a number of years. And so let's talk about what happened next. What happened next is that I got into some really bad habits, which is, I would work until 4 in the morning, and then I would go to bed, and I wouldn't wake up until 2 in the afternoon, and I wouldn't really talk to a lot of people. And I did this for a number of years, and I started to gain weight, and I was eating poorly, and so I really needed to make a change. And so the question is, well, just set your alarm, just change, just set your alarm and get up earlier. And that sounds really easy, but it wasn't. I would set an alarm and it would go off at 7 in the morning, and it'd be fuck it, I'm at home. I don't really need to get up. And so I went back to work for a studio. I pinged a buddy of mine and I just said, hey, listen, this is my business. This is what I've been doing independently, and this is your business. And I really think we can kind of come together and create a new thing. And the act of doing that would help me get up. It would help me change my entire schedule. It would be, people were depending on me, right? So I would have people that were kind of working under me. And so I did that for almost 4 years. I worked for 2 different studios. And the first one was Code and Theory. Worked for Code and Theory for about 9 months with my buddy Brandon. And then I went to go work for another buddy of mine, Michael Ventura, in a studio called Sub Rosa. And what was nice is that I was able to kind of break those habits that were kind of really detrimental to my health and my spirit and blah, blah, blah. People were depending on me, so I would really get up early. I would go in and engage with people and, again, get away from ego. And the nice thing is that we were pooling resources. So I would get business coming in on my half, and I could use their producers, their account services. So that was like really great for 4 years. And so, you know, I don't want to be, I don't know if I really understand what the definition of success is. And for me, that definition of success always keeps changing, which is, you know, does success mean I'm supposed to go work for a studio and make a lot of money? Does success mean I don't work for a studio and I'm independent and I'm freelance and I still pay my bills? Does success mean I'm supposed to like start a studio and have employees? Like what the, like, I don't know. I don't know what the definition of success is. And so because I'm always kind of questioning these definitions of success, it means that I'm open to anything. So it means, do I stay solo and just kind of float, you know, making work here? Does it mean that I go back to work for a studio and run a team or work in a team? You know, I'm open to all of that, and I'm not because I don't have this definition of success. I don't feel like I'm losing if I decide to go work for a studio again. I think it's just another accumulation of experiences with other people that are only going to help you grow, you know, moving forward. So yeah, you know, I worked for a studio and then I was solo for a bit and then I went to go work for a studio again and now I'm solo for a bit. So I'm just, you know, I'm just surfing life and I'm down for whatever is going to be a great experience.
Oh, fantastic. I can see there are so many people who can relate to your story of going independent and freelance and getting into bad habits. Definitely something that a lot of creative people experience in their lives.
Yeah.
So a solution of joining a team is a really brilliant one. And I think you do learn a lot by being in a different environment, collaborating with different people. It's always beneficial for both sides. I have another question about your overall journey through life, which is about your style and kind of your work itself. You're one of not that many designers who managed to stay relevant through kind of different waves of design. There are so many designers who are very relevant in the 80s and kind of had this wave of new tools and new things, and they kind of disappeared into nowhere. But you constantly reinvent yourself and try new tools. And I've seen one of your talks where you talk about this kind of part where it wasn't yours, you realized you kind of needed change, but you didn't know what this change could be. So can you tell a bit more about kind of reinventing your style, what this process looks like for you, especially knowing that you've done this now a couple of times? So maybe you have a recipe when you get stuck, how do you get unstuck?
Yeah, so 3 books that I think have really kind of changed my thinking about my position in the world. Yeah. So one of them is The Alchemist. And The Alchemist, I think, is a really great book because it tells a story about a person on a path and what that means. And you know, there are characters in the story who are on the path but don't know they're on the path. There are people who are on the path but want the reward before the time is right. So time is kind of an interesting component in The Alchemist, that time is going to happen on its terms and not necessarily when you want shit to happen. So The Alchemist was a really good book for me. Another good book for me was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I think every creative person should read that book. It's really small. It's a very thin book. It interviews the wealthiest people in America and kind of finds the common thread between them. And there are exercises in the book like understand self-worth, be willing to do the work. And this has been kind of an important idea in a lot of the slides that I show when I give talks, which is there will never be a perfect moment. There is only, you know, there will not be an auto kick-ass button in Photoshop. It's just hard. Yeah, it's just hard work, and hard work eventually will bear fruit. And so I think Think and Grow Rich is a really good book about like, shut the fuck up and just make work. Like just do everything and fail everything in order to get to success. And I think there's some really great ideas in that book. And then the third book, which was kind of a real eye-opener for me, was Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead. And The Fountainhead is like an impossible book for me because the lead character in that book, Howard Roark, is the worst. He's like he's the unattainable character. He's the character that you would like hope to be, but realize like it's also impossible to be that true to the art form. He really is like the impossible character.
But I think he's like the opposite to you in terms of his character itself.
Yeah, but he's also the guy that you like want to aspire to, like, you know. And also, it's like you don't want to be the Peter Keating. You know, you don't want to be the guy who just kind of. Peter Keating for me is like the guy that just kind of. Yeah, he's the money guy that just grabs onto trends, and it's just it's soulless, you know. And at least I would hope that I've got a little bit of the soul of Howard Roark that you'd be. He's the impossible character. But anyway, so that was a real tough book for me to read. So you know, those three books I think really helped me put on my path for remaining teachable, and I think the only reason why I've stayed relevant is, or at least, you know, maybe I'm not. Who knows? I have no idea. I think the only reason why I've stayed relevant is curiosity, and it is so easy to get stuck. And it's funny because I gave this talk a couple of years ago called Escaping Success, and I gave that talk at 99U, and it was kind of this weird topic to talk about because you realize like there's a whole generation of artists that are trying to figure themselves out. And then you're saying, great, I hope you figure out who you are, but don't get trapped. And if you do get trapped, how do you escape that trap? And for me, you know, like I had a certain style and I loved drawing flowers. I'm sorry, the recap of the books are Think and Grow Rich, The Alchemist, and The Fountainhead. Those are the three books. So I gave this talk called Escaping Success, and the whole idea is like, what if you figure out what your voice is, and then you just keep doing that style, and what will happen is that people will hire you because that style is unique and it's hot, but eventually it's not going to be hot anymore. Yeah. So if you cling on to this thing, the problem is that we're going to keep moving forward, and you're going to lose relevance unless you keep your curiosity high. And let me just say one thing. So I'm doing this project for BMW, and I'm talking to this Dutch designer, Adrian van Hoodink, who eventually becomes the design director at BMW. And I asked him this question. I said, you know, I don't know anything about making cars in terms of like the idea to being able to drive it on the street. So tell me about that process. And Adrian says, you know, it takes 5 years. It takes 5 years from coming up with an idea and evolving that idea eventually to the production and people can drive it. And he's like, so you basically have to make cars that the public desires before they know they desire it. And then the problem is that if you nail it, you have to know when to stop repeating yourself. Because what will happen is that you make this car that people desire, and then what marketing wants to do is let's keep doing that. Because that was really successful. So let's keep doing that. Let's keep doing that. And he says, and then what happens is that public tastes change. And when public tastes change, if you're stuck making this thing in the past, you'll never catch up. And he's like, so, you know, the auto industry very much is about embracing change. And so I was like, okay, well, how can I, you know, implement that into my process? You know, obviously it doesn't take me 5 years to make a design, but how do I take that idea? And so this idea of change, or like constantly being the student is a huge thing. You know, the student is always hungry for knowledge. The student is always hungry to try to figure out that sort of next form of enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm just always moving the goal, you know? So it's like you sort of set a goal, you get there, and then you just have to move the goal again. So the hope is that I will die and never make the goal. You know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like you know, it's like the goal just needs to keep moving. And so, especially being in tech, you know, things are changing. New technology is coming out. New ways of doing things are coming out. And for me, that's terribly exciting because it just means I can sit in something for a while and I can kind of figure out how to navigate those waters and then move on to the next thing. And so, you know, I've always been fascinated with things always changing and trying to make myself better and always be moving the goal and always trying to be the student rather than the master.
That is a fantastic advice, and it's actually it's very similar to advice from Michael Wolff. I'm sure you know the Michael Wolff,
sure.
the designer. So I work with him a lot, and he always said that curiosity is a muscle that you need to train every day. And he's 86 now, and he's as curious as ever. Everything excites him, everything, and that's why he's still relevant, and that's why he still produces great work, because every single thing he sees, he tries to get to understand how it works, what it is, where it came from, and that's what creatives live on.
And here's the funny thing, is that if you get to this point, right? So if you really look at yourself and you look at, here's the thing. The only person who's going to stop you is you, okay? Because you'll talk yourself out of everything. Oh, you know, the sun is not shining. There's not enough snow. This build of Photoshop is not the best build of Photoshop. I'm going to wait for the next. You'll put up all of these obstacles to stop yourself, like. And once you realize, like, you are your own worst enemy and you should just get the fuck out of your own way, something happens. This breakthrough happens. And this breakthrough that happens is that this idea of not having ideas or being stumped or creative block doesn't exist. And the truth of the matter is that I have more ideas that I have yet to make, and also understanding that I will probably die before I get to them all. That's a thing. But I also think that to getting to that place is very rigorous, and you have to be very honest with yourself that there are going to be obstacles. A lot of those obstacles are self-imposed. And so if I just know, like, oh, I'm being complacent, or oh, I'm too comfortable, or yes, this is painful and I'm playing video games now. There are all these things that will deter you from getting to this place of sort of perfect creative freedom. That the truth of the matter is that I have more ideas in my head than I have time on earth to execute. And that's kind of sad. But it also means that curiosity is untapped, and that idea of getting to the point of where, I mean, you said it perfectly, where that guy's like 80 something years old and he's still relevant and creatively interesting and interested. It's possible. It's not easy, but it's possible to be inspired every fucking day. Super easy. You just have to have the eyes to see it.
I think you should start building an AI that can continue your ideas after you go to different worlds.
That sounds terrible.
Well, let's take a couple of questions from the audience, because I think we are running out of time, so I want to ask as many as possible. First question from Turkey Maz Kerem. Which school do you recommend to learn artistic programming?
Ooh, no school, actually. I think that a lot of schools, and I'm obviously gonna piss some people off, and I'm also speaking very generally, but I think the academic system as it currently exists is behind. And I would probably say that you could learn stuff quicker and faster by doing online learning. There are things like Skillshare, there are things like Patreon, there are things like Gumroad. There are things online to help you get to where you want to get to quicker than traditional schools. That's not to say there aren't any great programs, like obviously NYU and ITP is really good. I mean, there are a lot of schools. UCLA has Casey Reese and processing. So the thing that I found with school was it gave me time. But Dan Schiffman, YouTube, you know, it's like if you want to learn all the things that I know, like Dan Schiffman on YouTube is the only place you need to go. There is so much happening in the online learning space that I think you can get to where you want to get to a lot quicker than the traditional school system, unfortunately. Unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. To be honest, part of what we do at Future Learning Academy is talk to people like yourself, because I think one part is doing things yourself and another part is just asking questions. I think those two go together to progress in whatever you're doing. One more question.
Sure.
Is it important to generate a trend as a graphic designer?
I think that's a really good and tricky question. I think I am always trying to think about how can I make work that sets the trend rather than follow it. Mm-hmm. But creating a trend is not always my goal. I just want to create things that are challenging and exciting for myself. But if the goal is I'm going to make something that starts a trend, there is a tremendous amount of failure that is going to occur. I think that's a really hard and impossible thing to say, like, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to save world hunger. So it's that kind of lofty goal. But, you know, I'm always thinking, like, I would hope that the things that I'm doing create trends rather than set it. And, you know, if that's the case, then it just means that I'm in a mindset of ignoring trends. And I think trends are really bad pitfalls, because if a trend occurs, probably somebody else has already created it. You're cloning it. That's not to say that you won't figure out a new way to take it further, which is fine, but you also have to be careful that trends will come and go. And if trends come and go, that can be another trap that will stick you in a place rather than keep you progressing. So always have the mindset, like, you hope that stuff that you're making can create new trends, but it should never be the goal.
Brilliant. Joshua, I want to ask you to show us your studio now. Yes.
Hi, Fran. That's my mother-in-law.
Oh,
yeah. Hi, Fran.
Lots of great people joining us. They all love your work. They're saying so many nice things about you and your stories. And I think it's so great that you're so generous sharing them. Would you like to show us your studio?
Oh, yeah. So let me just pick this up, and then what do? I turn this around? Cool. Okay, so it's currently snowing. It's snowing right now. So we're getting like 1 to 2 inches of snow. And here, let me just run outside really quick, because so my studio is a separate building. Okay, it's snowing. There's my house. It's my house right there.
Oh, nice.
There's where we have lunch in the summertime. And this house was, so the property is from 1896, and this house was built in 1912. It's kind of like a tiny little colonial thing. And so this is my studio. It used to be a barn. This whole front, this barn was built, I think, in 1896. And this whole front used to be barn doors. but because the barn doors let in a lot of air, like obviously during the winter time, it wasn't, it was not a comfortable environment to work in. So I gutted this whole thing. It's 2 stories, right? And we got some birdhouses up there. And so this used to be all barn doors. So I sealed up the front, put in some windows and a door, and got rid of the barn doors. There is my logo, which is the owl. And then if you come in, it's, I guess the studio is maybe 24 feet by 24 feet, but it's 2 stories. So upstairs, right? So the stairs go up here. Upstairs is kind of where I store everything, like books and magazines and bins of tubes and posters and blah, 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 blah. So in the front here, it's video games, Xboxes, PlayStations, blah, blah, blah. And then basically what I did is I took this whole front, and I got this idea from Casey Neistat, actually. I was watching Casey Neistat on YouTube and saw how he was sort of organizing his studio, and I just thought, wow, that's really brilliant. And so everything in here kind of serves a purpose, So I've got like markers and glue guns and tape and paint pigments and paint markers and crank and tissue paper and some Adobe stuff and Arduino and audio cables and audio mixer and graphic burner parts and routers and cameras and mice and stencils and presentation stuff and video cables and GoPros and more Arduino and drone stuff and Ethernet cables and more Apple and Wacom stuff and adapters and dongles and so this is kind of like everything that I use to kind of make stuff. So I've been sort of building my own computers. I build these boxes that I travel with. I'm really a triple setup, so I'm running Mac, I'm running PC. This is a Hackintosh, and I'm also running some laptops with Linux on it. So I really have kind of all 3 environments here. I've even been building these sort of rigs with GPU cards to do rendering and cryptocurrency mining. I love building shit. So usually I'm sitting right there, and again I've got sort of these 2 screens that I work on. So generally, like I'll program on this screen, and then the output will happen up here, which is a 4K monitor. So if I'm programming for 4K, I can kind of see the results up here. These, again, are the stairs going up. Centipede, one of my favorite arcades, programmed by a woman. Awesome. All artwork gets stored in here, so these are the flat files, but they're really big ones. And then I have 3 wide format printers. So I've got an Epson 44-inch printer, a ton more storage and ink and supplies. I have some drawings that I've made. I've got way too many skateboards. Wow. I have an HP 24-inch printer. And then I've got Pelican cases where I store projectors. I've got 2 of these Panasonic projectors. I'm now tinkering with the Lightform, which is kind of a new device that's just come out. I've had that for a couple of months where I'm doing some projection mapping stuff. Of course, we have VR, so the little sensors are up here and here. And I've got another 24-inch printer. So I've got sort of 3 wide format printers in here. And then I just got your traditional drawing table, and this one's great because it's made out of glass. So if I'm doing some tracing or under projection stuff, super fun. So I work in a really small studio. Rugs from Istanbul, which is one of my favorite places on earth. I would love to keep going back to Istanbul and just fill the entire studio with Turkish rugs. But here's the important thing that I really wanted to talk about, which is the artwork in my studio here, none of it is mine. If you walk around here, this is other people who inspire me. I don't want to look at my work. I want to look at other people's work. So there's a lot of people's work who I really love and admire. Hydro 74. This is Mike Giant. I got some hand-painted skateboards from people. you know, this is all people's work that I love, and I want to surround myself with people's work that I love. I tend not to want to have my own work in my studio. I want to be inspired by other people's work, and so I hide most of my stuff. You know, I think that's the only piece that I have of mine, but it's just too big to hide anywhere. But yeah, I want to surround myself with other people's creativity. So that's kind of an important
amazing
thing.
I think everyone feels very jealous about your incredible studio and all everything that you have, but also you're so well organized. Like, there are lots of things, but they're all very well organized.
Everything has a place. Yeah, and I blame being German. My background is German. My grandparents immigrated to the United States from Germany, and I think it's that part of me that's just like everything has its place and must be organized, and yeah, it's a wonderful, terrible habit.
Great. I think we are running out of time, so I think it was really incredible. I could talk to you for another couple of hours about everything. It's really inspiring, and you have so much energy. It's really amazing talking to you. It's one of the times when you talk to the person and you leave with even more energy and thoughts and inspiration. So thank you so much for spending time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Last thought, something maybe you want to advise someone who is a creative person and really wants to be like you when they grow up.
Yeah, I think, you know, the thing that I keep coming back to is a couple of things, which is the type of work you make is the type of work you'll get hired to do. So it's probably a pretty good idea to love the work that you're making. And if you take that time to invest in making work that you love and sharing it on social, someone is going to hire you. You know, someone is going to love what you're making. And so I think that's kind of an important thing to keep in mind is that everything that you share on social, like for me, everything that I post on Instagram, everything I post on Twitter is just trying to broadcast to the world, I'm weird, and here's all the weird stuff I love making. And then all of a sudden somebody's going to be like, I'm weird. You should come make weird stuff with us. You know, it's like the voice that you use to broadcast to the world is hopefully the type of work that you want to keep making. And then I'm going to come back to that second point, and I'll kind of end it there, which is there will never be a perfect moment. And as soon as you understand that, like, today is the day, right now, as soon as we get off this call, is it. Like, right now is the time. There will never be, your chakras will never align. The planets will not align, and a laser beam from heaven will not hit you in the face. Like, there will never be the perfect moment. And if there's never the perfect moment, then today is a great day to start on you. And so those are kind of two things that really kind of drive me going forward.
Today's the day. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for your questions. And thanks, Joshua. Personal pleasure talking to you.